Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out some Edgar Allan Poe. This is Longfellow's Ballads. Il y a Perrier says comfort, que tout est dit publique, tout convention, rescue es un solstice, car l'este conven a plus grand nombre. Would one be safe in wagering that any given public area is erroneous, for it has been yielded to the clamor of the majority? And this strictly philosophical, although somewhat French assertion has especially bearing upon the whole race of what are termed maxims and popular proverbs, 9/10 of which are quintessence of folly. One of the most deplorable faults of them was the antique adage, de gustibus non est disputem, there should be no disputing about taste. Here, the idea designed to be conveyed to that of any one person has or just right to consider his own taste, and true to has anyone other that taste itself, in short, is an arbitrary something amenable to no law and measurable by no definite rules. And it must be confessed, however, that this extreme, exceedingly vague and important treatise, which are alone extant, have much to answer for their regards, confirming the general error. Not the least important services which hereafter making will owe to phrenology may perhaps be recognized in an analysis of the real principles and a digest of the resulting laws of taste. These principles, in fact, are as clearly traceable, and these laws are readily acceptable of systems as they are any whatever. And in the meantime, the insane adage that above mentioned is in no respect more generally, more stupidly, and more pertinaciously quoted than by the admirers of what is termed to be the good old Pope, and or good old Goldsmith school, or poetry in reference to the bolder, more natural, and more ideal compositions of such authors as Colligan and Lamartine in France, and Herder, Gortner, and Uhland in Germany, Brand and Bagestein in Denmark, Baumann and Tegner and Nyberg in Sweden, Keats, Shelley, and Coleridge and Tennyson in England, Lau and Longfellow in America. De Gustibus Non says these good old schoolfellows may have no doubt what their mental translation of the phrase is. We pity our taste, we pity everybody's taste but our own. It is our purpose to controvert the popular idea that the poets we just mentioned owe to novelty, to trickeries, to expression, and to other meticulous efforts that their appreciation be certain readers to demonstrate for the matter of susceptibility of demonstration that such poetry and such alone has fulfilled the legitimate office of the muse, has thornily satisfied an earnest and unquenchable desire existing in the heart of man. This volume of ballads and tales includes, with several brief original pieces, a translation from the Swedish of Tenner, in attempting to whatever should be attempted, a literal version of both the words and the matter of the poem. Professor Longfellow has failed to do justice either to his author or himself. He has striven to do what no man ever did well, and what from the nature of language itself never can be done well, unless, for example, we shall come to have an influx of spondees in our English tone, and it will always be impossible to construct an English hexameter. Our spondees, or what we should say, our spondaic words, are rare. In the Swedish, they are nearly as abundant as in the Latin and Greek. We have only compound, context, football, and a few other similar ones. This is the difficulty, and that it will be so evident upon reading the Children of the Lord's Supper, where the sole readable verses are those in which we meet with a rare spondaic dissyllables. We mean to say readable in hexameters, for many of them will read very well in mere English didactics as certain irregularities. Much have we admired the genius of Mr. Longfellow, and we are fully sensible of his many errors of afflection and intimidation. His artistic skill is great and his ideology high, but his conception of the aims of poesy is all wrong. And this we shall prove in some future day, of our own satisfaction at least. His didactics are out of place. He has written brilliant poems by accident, that is to say, that when permitting his genius to get the better of his conventional habit of thinking, a habit deduced from German study, we do not mean to say that the didactic moral may not be well made the undercurrent of the poetical thesis, but that it can never be well put so obtrusely forth as in the majority of the compositions. We have said that Mr. Longfellow's conceptions of the aims of poesy is erroneous, and that thus, laboring at the disadvantage, he does violent wrong in his own high powers. And now the question is, what are his ideas and the aims of the muse? And we gather these ideas from the general tendency of the poems, it will be at once evident that, imbued with the particular spirit of German song and particular conventionality, he regards the inculcation of a moral as essential. Here we find it necessary to repeat what we have referenced only to the general tendency of his compositions, for there are some magnificent exceptions there, as if by accident he has permitted his genius to get the better of his conversational prejudice. The didacticism of his prevalent tone of the song, his invention, his imaginary, his all, is made subservient by the elucidation of some of our more points, but rarely of more than one, which he looks upon as truth. And that is this mode of produce, which will find stern defenders, which never excites surprise as long as the world is full to overflowing with cant and conventicles. There are men who are scramble on all fours through the muddiest sloughs of vice to pick up the single apple of virtue. Through these things called men who, for long as the sun toils with snuffing huzzas every figure that takes upon itself the semblance of truth, even although the figure in itself only a stuffed patty, and as much out of place as a toga on the statue of Washington, or out of season as rabbits in the days of the dog star. We say this with little fear of contradiction, yet the spirit of the assertion must be more heated than the letter. Mankind has been seen as defined poesy in 1,000 and in 1,000 conflicting definitions, but the war is only of words. Induction is as well as applicable to the subject as the most palatable and utilitarian, and by its sober processes, we find that in the respect of compositions, we have been really received as poems, the imaginative or the more popularity, the creative portions, along with ensured when they do so received. Yet these works, on account of these portions, have once been so received and so named, it has happened naturally and inevitably that other potions, totally unpoetic, have not only come to be regarded to be the popular voice as poetic, but have been made to serve as false standards of perfection in the adjustment of other poetical claims. Whatever has been found and whatever has been received as a poem has been blindly regarded as ex statu poetic, and this is a species of gross error in which scarcely could have been made its ways into any less intangible topic. In fact, that license which appertains to the muse herself, it has been thought decorous and not sagacious to indulge in the examination of her character. Poesy is a response unsatisfactory, it is true, but still in some measure a response to a natural and irrepressible demand. Man being what he is, the time could never have been in which poesy was not. Its first element is the thirst for supernatural beauty, a beauty which is not afforded the soul by any existing colloquial collocation of earth's forms, a beauty which perhaps no possible combination of these forms would possibly produce. Its second element is the attempt to satisfy this third by novel combinations among these forms of beauty which already exist, or by novel combinations of those combinations which our predecessors, toiling in chase of the same phantom we already set in order. We thus clearly deduce the novelty, the originality, the invention, the imagination, or lastly, the creation of beauty, for the terms of here employed are synonymous as the essence of all poesy, nor is it the idea so much as variance with ordinary opinion as, at first sight, it may appear. A multitude of antique dogmas on this topic will be found, which divested an intrinsic speculation to be easily resolvable into the definition now proposed. We do nothing more than present tangibly the vague chords of the world's ideas. We recognize the idea itself floating, unsettled, indefinite, and in every attempt which has yet been made to circumscribe the conception of poesy in words. A striking instance of this is observable in the fact that no definition exists in either the beautiful or the one of those qualities which have above designed synonymously with creation and have been pointed out as the chief attribute of the muse. Invention, however, or imagination is by far more commonly insisted upon. The word Romas itself, creation, speaks volumes upon this point. Neither will it be amiss here to mention Count Belford's definition of poetry in L'Art d'experimenter les pensées par la fiction, which this definition of which a philosopher is profound in a certain extent, the German term Dichtkunst, the art of fiction, and Dichten, to feign, which are used for poetry and to make verses, are in full and remarkable accordance. It is nevertheless in a contribution of the two omniprevalent ideas that the novelty and we believe the force of our own proposition are to be found. The elements of that beauty which is felt in sound may be the mutual or commune heritage of earth and heaven, contenting ourselves with the firm conviction that music and its modifications of rhythm and rhyme, and of so vast a moment of poesy as never to be neglected by him, or as truly poetical as if so mighty a force in furthering the great aim indeed that he is mad who rejects its assistance, content with this idea that we shall not pause to maintain its absolute essentiality for the mere sake of rounding a definition, that our definition of poetry will necessarily exclude much of what, through a sublime toleration, has been hitherto ranked as poetical in a matter which affords us not even momentary concern. We address but the thoughtful and heed only their approval with our own. Our suggestions are truthful, then after many days shall be understood as truth, even though found in contradiction of all that has been hitherto to understood. Its false shall we not be the first to bid them to die? We would reject, of course, all such matters as Armstrong on health, the revolting production of Pope's Essay on Man. We may well be content with the title of the Essay on Rhyme, Hudibras, and other merely humorous pieces. We do not gainsay the particular merits of either of these latter compositions, but deny them of the position held. In the notice of Brainard's poems, we took occasion to show that the common use of the certain instrument rhythm had tended more than aught else to confound humorous verse with poetry. The observation is now recalled to corroborate what we have just said in respect to the vast effort or force of melody in itself, an effect which could elevate even into momentary confusion with the highest efforts of mind composition, such as are the greater number of satires or burlesques. We have shown our ground of objection to the general themes of Professor Longfellow, in common with all who claim the sacred title of poet, who should limit his endeavors to the creation of novel moods of beauty in form, in color, in sound, in sentiment, for all over this vague range has the poetry of word dominion. To what the word term pose may be safely and properly left all else. The artist who dealt in this thesis may always resolve his doubt by the single question, might not this matter be as well as better handled in prose? If it may, then it is no subject for the muse. In the general acceptation of the term beauty, we are content to rest, being carefully only to suggest that in our particular views, it must be understood as inclusive or of the sublime. Of the pieces of which constitute the present volume, there are no more than one or two thoroughly fulfilling of the ideas we have proposed, although the volume as a whole is by no means so changeable and didacticism as Mr. Longfellow's previous book. We would mention his poems Nearly True, The Village Blacksmith, the wreck of the Hipparchus, and especially the skeleton in armor. And the first mentioned, we have the beauty of simple-mindedness in as genius thesis, and this thesis inimitably handled until the concluding stanza, which the spirit of legitimate poesy is aggrieved in the pointed antithetical deduction of a work moral from what has gone before. The wreck of the Hipparchus, we have the beauty of childlike confidence and innocence, and that of the father's stern courage and affection, but with slight exception, these particulars of the storm were detailed or not poetic subjects. Their thrilling horror belongs to the prose, which it could be far more effectively discussed, as Professor Longfellow may assure himself at any moment by experiment. These are the points of a tempest which afford the loftiest and truest poetical themes, point to which pure beauty is found, or better still, beauty heightened into its sublime by terror. And when we read, among other similar things, that the salt sea was frozen on her breast, the salt tears in her eyes, we feel, if not positive disgust, at least a chilling sense of the inappropriate. In the skeleton in armor, we find a pure and perfect thesis artistically treated. We find the beauty of bold courage and self-confidence, of love and maiden devotion, of reckless adventure, and finally of self-contaminating grief. Combined with all of this, we have numerous points of beauty apparently insulated, and all aiming the main effect of impression. The heart is strived, and the mind does not lament its mal-instruction. The meter is simple, sonorous, well-balanced, and fully adapted to the subject. Upon the whole, there are few truer poems than this. It has but one defect, an important one. The prose remarks prefacing the narrative are really necessary, but every work of art should contain within itself all that is requisite to its own comprehension, and this remark is especially true of the ballad. In poems of magnitude, and the mind of the reader is not at all times enabled to include in one comprehensive survey the propositions or the proper adjustments of the whole. If he pleased, if at all, the particular passages, and the sum of his pleasure is compounded of the aims of the pleasurable sentiments inspired by these individual passages of the progress of perusal, but in pieces of less extent, the pleasure is unique in the proper acception of this term, and understood is employed without difficulty, and the contemplation of the picture as a whole, and thus its effect will depend in great measure upon the perfection of its finish, upon the nice adaptation of its constituent parts, and especially upon the rightly termed by Schlegel the unity of totality of interest. By this practice of prefixing explanatory passages is utterly at variance and with it unity, but by prefix we either put in possession of the subject of the poem, or some hint, historic fact, or suggested is thereby afforded, not included into the body of the piece, which without the hint is incomprehensible. In the later case, while perusing the poem, the reader must revert in mind at least to the prefix of the necessary explanation. In the former, the poem being a mere paraphrase of the prefix, the interest is divided into the prefix and the paraphrase. In either instance, the totality of the effect is destroyed. We're going to leave it here till tomorrow. Might read another poem from Tamerlane. A couple more poems, suppose. Evening Star. 'Twas noontide of summer and midtime of night, and stars in their orbits shone pale thro' the light, o'er the brighter cold moon. Mid planets her slaves, herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gazed awhile on her cold smile, too cold for me, then passed as a shroud, a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee, proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be, for joy in my heart is the proud part thou bearest in heaven at night, and more I admire the distant fire than that colder lowly light. One more poem by Poe, and we will end for today. This is called Imitation. A dark, unfathomable tide of terminable pride, a mystery and a dream. Should my early life seem, I say that dream was fraught with a wild and waking thought of being that has been, with my spirit hath not seen. Let I let them pass me by with my dreaming eye. Let none of earth inherit the vision of my spirit, through thoughts I would control as a spell upon my soul. For the bright hope of last, and the light time has passed, but my world rest hath gone with the sigh, and it passed on. I care not thou it perish, with a thought I did cherish. Thank you for tuning in. Anyone who watched my stream, if you like and enjoy anything I'm saying here, trying to speak the truth the best that I can. So like and share. Have a nice holiday, and God bless the children.